Greetings. We're back again for our second class, getting started here and moving along. We'll pick up the tempo here a little bit pretty quickly. But I had a few more things I wanted to tie up from yesterday and explain, and then I want to jump into our theme for the day, which is spiritual well-being. It's an unusual topic, somebody would say, for a missionary. I mean, hey, we're talking about preacher types, but actually it isn't. It's not that easy to remain spiritually viable when you're in a difficult situation spiritually day in and day out. So we'll be talking about that a little bit and what it means and how we deal with it and all of that. But first, I want to talk a little bit about this report that I'm going to ask you to do. I encourage the students, in fact, it's one of the requirements for this class, that you do a report, and the report is something you need to present in a class. Now, we're here on the internet, so we can't very well have you come up forward and present it like I would if I was there on campus. So what I'm going to be doing there is speaking with my colleagues in the School of Ministry and in the other schools there at the university as well, and ask the professors to be willing to allow you to present in one of their classes. I don't think there'll be a problem with that, so we'll go ahead and make plans for doing that. And what I want you to do then is prepare sometime during the course of this semester a presentation. Now we're shooting for roughly 20 minutes. Now it can be a little bit less, it can be a little bit more. That's not too big of a deal. It depends on, in part, on how much the other professors are willing to give us. But let's say a minimum of 10 minutes and shoot for a maximum of maybe 20, and I don't think we'll have too much trouble with too many of you going beyond that. So anywhere within that framework will be fine. Now, what am I wanting you to do there? I've given you the topics in the syllabus. You can check those out. You can pick one. If you have a different topic that's not in the syllabus and you'd like to do it, drop me a note and we'll talk about it. And there's a fair chance I'll accept it as long as it's anything to do with world evangelism, missionary life and work, that type of thing. So I'm not terribly sticky, but I have given you some suggestions there. And unless you have something you're really excited about, I would prefer that you pick one of those. The reason I've picked those, I think they are the crucial issues in missions today. It's what everybody's dealing with, it's what everybody's struggling with, it's what everybody's talking about, and it's also the direction in which missions typically loses its course. It gets off track, and it has done that for centuries. And so for that reason, we see that cycle kind of starting again. And I feel pretty strongly that if you're going to be working in missions in any way, shape, or form, then you really need to have a grip on this. You have to understand what's going on and the why we do things, the why we don't do some things. And we'll be talking about that throughout the semester. So you'll be getting it from my point of view. And then, of course, one of the books that you have to read deals specifically with this area also. So be thinking about that now. Be talking to one of your other professors. Decide which professor you like particularly well, which professor you think would be willing to do it. I would encourage you to think about doing it in your field of specialty, in your area of study. If you're in the nursing program, then I'd kind of like you to do it in one of the nursing classes. And I will work with you on how to do that. If you have questions, if you have doubts, man, I wouldn't know what to do if I'm going to talk to nursing students about this particular aspect. I can give you some pointers, and we can do that in the chats where we go back and forth. So simply send me a little note. Say, hey, I want to do this. I'm in the nursing program. I'm in the counseling program. I'm in the business program. How do I present this to them? And if you have doubts or questions, we'll work on that a little bit with you and help you do it. So talk to one of your professors right now. See about going up there and doing that with them. Ask if they're willing to do it. Let me know who it is that you want to present with, and then I will write that professor also and speak with them as well. And I think it'll go fine. I don't think we'll have any problems with this, and I think you'll enjoy it as you get into it. One other point there that I will mention, I do allow you to do it in a group. If there's 2 or 3 of you, say in the nursing program, or in the business program or counseling or whatever, and here in the ministry department, School of Ministry department, and you want to do it together, that's okay. I'm perfectly willing to let you do it that way. The only drawback to that, you all get the same grade. So if you get somebody up there to present and they really bomb it, boy, you're in trouble quick. But it's up to you. If you want to do it as a group, that's fine with me. I'm very flexible. What I'm trying to teach you to do with this is how to work through some of these issues, how to think about them, how to come up with reasonable conclusions, and then once you've come up with a reasonable conclusion, how to present those ideas coherently to other people. And so that's why I've chosen this particular means for fulfilling the requirements of what would say be your typical book report or something of that nature. The second thing I want to deal with before I get into the topic of the day are the texts that I picked for you. There isn't a huge amount out there in the way of world evangelism and missionary life and work. We find books coming out on particular topics, on areas within fields, things of that nature. But your general, say, missionary life and work, world evangelism type textbook that used to be quite common in evangelical Christianity in years past are pretty hard to find today. The materials that we do find often tend to be quite expensive as well. And I was really reluctant to pick out a couple of textbooks here that was going to cost you guys 80 or 100 bucks or something like that. I know most of you will read them one time and then that might be it. You might not do anything else with them. And since there are not that many people in the missions program and even fewer in the missions and the ministry program and even fewer in the missions track, the textbooks would probably be pretty hard to sell as used. So for that reason, I tried to pick books that were economical and yet good. The first book, Missionary Method, St. Paul's of Ours, a classic work, quite old now. I think it was written back in the 30s, something like that. Written by a rather fascinating fellow by the name of Roland Allen. He was an Anglican missionary. Just like William Carey, by the way. Well, William Carey had actually pulled out of the Anglican Church, but that's where he started anyhow. He's interesting because he starts talking about how did Paul do it, and he's incredibly biblical. Yet since he is an English Catholic, an Episcopal fellow, Church of England, he repeatedly goes back to some of these forms and rituals and things that they use and talks about them and everything. It doesn't seem to occur to him that what he's doing with the missionary methods of St. Paul maybe he ought to do with his own church and the way his church does it. Or maybe he did it as a matter of expediency. He actually got in trouble for writing this book. Instead of getting accolades and promotions, he actually got demoted. And they sent him to some backwater mission in Africa where he that's where he lived and worked out his final years and died. He did not receive critical acclaim. He was not appreciated by his co-workers and by those who administered the missionary effort of the Anglican Church. He was pretty much a pariah and an outcast because he had said, let's question how we're doing things, and let's look at how the Apostle Paul did them. Let's compare the two and see if maybe we ought to change what we're doing. Maybe we ought to copy what he's doing. So I like the book. It's dated, yes. The style is certainly antique. You might find it difficult reading. That's okay. I think you'll find a lot of diamonds mixed in with a rough. And I think as you read it, you'll find out it's worthwhile. And then the other book on dependency that I've recommended, a modern book, but a very good one, and dealing with an issue. That's the type of mission books actually we can find right now pretty easily. So I picked one, the most pertinent one of those that are out there. And that's why I selected the particular textbooks that I did. Now, the topic of the day and what I want to get on as the material is spiritual well-being. Spiritual well-being. You sit there and say, but that shouldn't be a question. We're preachers, aren't we? We're leaders in the church. Yes, we are. And yes, you are. Yet at the same time, I think ministry has a problem, and you hear a lot actually about minister burnout, preacher burnout. They're giving every day. They're taking from themselves and giving to others, and a lot of times they just burn out. They quit, they walk away, and it's not that unusual to hear of some preacher type who's had some significant moral failings. That's not because he was a bad person. It's because he got burnt out. He got weak. He lost that spiritual strength and fell into temptation. So it is more common than what you think, and it's a problem that I think every one of you will face, whether you're going to ministry or whether you're going to missionary work per se. So that's why I wanted to deal with it a little bit. What are we doing there? Well, the specific problem on the mission field is unique, I think. At least in the States, you're dealing with people that have a certain level of spiritual maturity. The elders of the church should be spiritually mature individuals. You're dealing with other ministers and preacher types where you can, through dialogue and sharing with them, find encouragement and find nutrition, spiritual nutrition. Many churches today have been careful to give their preachers a few days off where they can go and just simply attend another church, and or where a guest speaker comes in and they can listen to that guest speaker, and they can find nourishment by not being in the leadership of the church service that day, but by being a receiver, which we all need. That's typical in churches. It will not be typical on the mission field. For the following reason. Start de siguiente razón. I still think in Spanish almost as much as I think in English. For the following reason, you will often be dealing with people who are spiritually very immature, especially if you're doing pioneer type missionary work. You might be dealing with people that have absolutely no knowledge of scriptural truth and biblical principles. And so you're going to be teaching them from day one. You're often going to find out that in a situation like that, it is particularly difficult to be able to take time off and to rest and to relax. Where are you going to go to simply attend a church service? There might not be church services for you to attend. You may be starting churches in that country and in that place for the first time. And you're going to find that the level of spiritual hunger and the level of spiritual poverty is absolutely immense. And when that is the case, it's like it just sucks it out of you. It just takes it from you. And you're giving and you're giving and you're giving. You're working overly hard trying to get a job done that's probably the work of many people, and yet you're doing it yourself in the beginning and then trying to bring others up to where they take your place and replace you in some of the things that you've been doing. And so as you do all of these things, you're going to find out pretty quickly it's extremely tiring, it's extremely fatiguing, and we'll get into the physical well-being in our next class session. But at this point, we're talking about the spiritual well-being. If you give every day and you give every day and you give every day, pretty soon you're going to find out that the well is starting to run dry and you're repeating yourself. You don't have things to give anymore. What can you do about that? I'm going to give you a basic, simple course of action here. And then if you do go on the mission field, and I certainly hope some of you do, remember, as long as the good Lord gives me life, if you've ever been a student in my class, you're always welcome to write, to call, to look me up, to ask me questions. And as long as the Lord has me here on this earth, my willingness to mentor you and work with you and help you will always be there, always be present, always be available. So keep in mind, at a future time, if you're starting to run into troubles here and you say, man, who can I talk to here? I don't want to write back to my supporting churches, tell them I'm having troubles. They might drop me, and they might. That's always a real possibility, a real danger. You can always write to me. You can always message me. You can always look up for chat on Facebook if the internet still exists at that time. You can always do Skype or Facebook, call on the cell phone, however you want to do it. And we will talk. You do have a willing ear, an open heart, and a person who can talk confidentially with you about anything and not condemn you, not judge you for the fact that you're struggling or questioning. Having said that, how do you do your best to avoid getting in that situation and to the point where you're having these troubles? Well, I'll start out with a few very basic things. Number one, take care of your time with the Lord, your quiet time, your time of devotion, your time of personal prayer. The fact that you're reading the Bible and studying it for teaching and sermons, that doesn't cut the mustard. You need the time when you're in the Word yourself. Do it somehow. Now, I'll give you my own personal method. That works for me. It suits me. It might not work for you, and that's okay. I read a chronological Bible. I bought a chronological Bible, which is quite good one. F. LaGard Smith is the guy that wrote it. He's actually a Church of Christ, non-instrumental, I think. But he did a very good job with it. And he takes the Bible and he puts it into chronological order. For example, if a prophet is railing against this particular king, you don't find it in the book of Isaiah or Jeremiah or whatever. You find it right where that king is, either in 1 Kings or Chronicles, 2 Kings or 2 Chronicles, whatever. And he takes a prophecy up. And so there's this king doing whatever he's doing. And in walks Isaiah and just excoriates this guy and rips him up one side and down the other. And for me, that's fascinating because it brings us to life. It also helps me avoid a problem, and that is where you get into the Bible and you start saying, oh, I can use this in a sermon, I can use that, because it sort of eliminates the book, chapter, and verse issue. And so you're just reading the Bible like a story, and that really helps me as well. If that works for you, great, go for it. Use it. Maybe it won't. I talked to someone and they got an audio version of the Bible, and what they do is listen to it. And I've done that once or twice too. It's actually pretty good. It seems like things that you see when you're reading, you maybe skip over sometimes, just pass them through. Yet when you hear it, it's like that jumps out at you. And so maybe that's a good way to go. Whatever you have to do, make sure you do something to keep two aspects in your spiritual life going on a regular basis. Do not become careless with them. Do not allow them to slip and fall by the wayside. That's your prayer time with the Lord. The Lord says, come, let us reason together. There's no problem telling the Lord your problems. There's no problem sharing with the Lord your doubts. There's no problems questioning what's going on in life. There's no problems asking, why is this happening to me? You can talk to the Lord about that. Remember, Paul says that we cry out, Abba. That means daddy. That's a diminutive. That's not Father high and mighty. That's my dad I can talk to. And so we have that imagery in the Bible, and take advantage of it. Talk to the Lord. Complain to the Lord. If you have something you want to complain about, start complaining to this guy over here. Pretty soon you're going to get gossip chains started. You can complain to the Lord, and he'll listen. He'll understand. When you talk to the Lord, you can praise him. And I try to encourage people to take that model prayer, what we call the Lord's Prayer, and look at it. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done. And as he goes through that prayer, he talks about different things. We praise. We acknowledge God's sovereignty. We ask for his provision. We ask for his forgiveness. And then we commit ourselves to forgiving others as well. And so those are the types of things that should be in your daily prayer life. For me, it works early in the morning. Now, I'm an early morning person. You're probably not. I haven't met too many college students that are. That's okay. I probably wasn't at that time of life either. I get up very early, in fact. I usually typically about 4 o'clock in the morning, 5, about the latest I ever sleep in, unless something unusual's happened. And one reason I like to get up in the morning, it gives me that quiet time with the Lord. I can pray. Nobody's bothering me. The phone's not ringing, all that. The other thing that I encourage you to do is find a mentor. So we have your Bible reading that you don't forget. You don't let it slip by the wayside. You keep your prayer life active and viable and vital. Make sure it's something that's living, and make sure that it's something that talks to and about your needs and your issues and your problems. And then the third thing I'd recommend to do these 3 things, get my old scout symbol up there. The third thing I'd recommend there, do it this way here, would be to find a mentor somewhere, somehow. Now that's usually going to be an older person that you can admire, that you can look up to, that you can respect, that sort of father figure or grandfather figure. Someone that you can talk to and know that they're going to be understanding, and know that they're going to be caring, and know that they're going to be helpful. Now, if they do those 3 things, they will be worth their weight in gold to you. Now, if you do all of these things and you're careful with all these things, you're going to find out you're able to keep your spiritual life healthy, even when you're on the mission field, even when you don't have another church to go to, even when you're out all by yourself in the middle of the jungle, in the middle of the bush, and with people that are spiritually very, very weak or on a very, very low level, maybe still caught up in witchcraft and spiritism and things of that nature. We can help them without hurting ourselves. We do it carefully. We pay attention to our spiritual well-being as well. So I think that's something that's of critical importance. Okay, that'll be it for today. We'll conclude our lesson at this point, and leave you to do some reading in your books, and I'll be looking forward to your post starting in the next day or two. Have a good day.